Welcome back to Northwest Digital News. I'm Kevin Hunter with Chris Bornstead and Kyle Torgerson in studio here on the broadcast. And today we have a number of topics on the show, but we're going to be talking about the truth as opposed to your truth. And we will very unapologetically focus all of our shows and all of our content around the truth. So if you're somebody who's offended by the truth, you don't like facts, you don't like biology, you don't like statistics, you don't like science, all those kinds of things, this is probably the wrong place for you.
Actually, they'll just say they don't like our truth, and then they'll
call it our truth as opposed to somebody else.
Yeah.
Well, you know, take no offense from this, guys, but I'm not interested in your version of the truth either. I'm interested in the truth.
The truth.
The truth, yes.
Who gets to determine the truth?
The truth has been determined on many topics very simply for a lot of different situations. So let's we're actually going to share a little bit about the truth, and then somebody else, in fact, one of the leaders in our state, known as Governor Jay Inslee, how he was embracing your truth or his own truth at the White House, and we'll share exactly how untruthful and out of touch with the reality that our governor was. He embarrassed our state in Washington, D.C. the other day. And that's why we also have hashtag Governor Goofy, because when our governor does stuff like this, he's going to get tagged on this with Governor Goofy. So we'll share that in a moment. Before we do that, let's get to talking about the AR-15 bump stocks. And for people who don't know what these are, we have a video clip that we'll play here in just a second. But I want to ask you guys, do you know what the AR stands for? Now, there's a lot of conversations.
Okay, well, here's one thing I know what it doesn't stand for.
Yeah,
and it does not stand for assault rifle.
It does not
stand for assault rifle.
So, what does AR stand for? Armalite rifle.
What Kevin said.
Yes, that's what it stands
exactly
for.
What Kevin
that was
said.
The maker of the weapon. And now, here's the interesting thing: they're going back to Vietnam time period. There was the.
I'm going to interrupt for some breaking news. Are you ready? So, first responders are blocking streets from Hemlock to Fur and 14th to 15th Avenue in Longview due to a gas line being struck. Cascade Natural Gas is on scene. Please avoid this area.
There you have it.
Repeat that again. Hours, please stay away from Hemlock Street to First Street and 14th and 15th Avenue in Longview due to a gas line being struck. So that post about the guy saying, I think I smelled gas earlier, I guess apparently there was some merit to that.
Yes. Yes. So, yeah, don't go anywhere near a gas leak.
Sorry.
That's all right. So, anyhow, a little bit of history about the AR-15. Back in the Vietnam era, there was the M14. It was a very heavy, cumbersome rifle that the military carried.
I have shot in both. And
so the Armalite rifle was actually designed to replace that. And when you look at the M14, when you wonder, well, where did the 15 even come from? Well, it was designed to be a rifle that was going to replace the M14. However, the AR-15 became a weapon that is now like a civilian model of a weapon that actually is used in combat, but the AR-15 is not a combat rifle. Now, let me explain some of the distinctions. You guys been around an M16? Which is the rifle that soldiers in combat carry. Have you been around an M16?
No, they aren't legal, so
okay, so M16 has a very distinctive feature that an AR-15 does not. M16 has a 3-round burst. Okay, so you can switch it to semi, which is 1 round per trigger pull, or you can switch it to 3-round burst, which it will then fire 3 rounds every single time you pull the trigger, just like do 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 do. So anyway, those are the distinctions. The AR-15 at the time it was designed, they had the idea that would replace the M14. Instead, the replacement for the M14 ends up become the M16, and then the AR-15 becomes a civilian version of that. Now, for people who are not familiar with the AR-15 or the civilian version, this weapon isn't a whole lot different than any other semi-auto rifle whether it's a 30-06 or 30-30 or a 22 or whatever else. We're just talking about a round size and a semi-automatic rifle. But the issue with bump stocks. Now, here's one of the reasons why the president has said that he's open to banning bump stocks or putting some type of restriction on bump stocks, is that you'd be surprised how much it changes the rate of fire. Now, I've fired a lot of semi-auto rifles, carried an M16, shot thousands of rounds through an M16, and I can tell you that a weapon that fires in the fashion that a AR-15 would, with a bump stock attached, it's a very rare person that can actually control that rifle and where the rounds are going. It becomes the military uses this term for shooters who are actually not in control of their weapons. They call it spray and pray. So they're in combat and, you know, they get all freaked out and whatever else, and they just take their gun and just, you know, spray and pray. Hope they're hitting somebody who's shooting back at them. And anyway, this AR-15, you put a bump stock on it, it becomes a spray and pray kind of weapon. And for people who aren't familiar with them, we're going to share with you a video that was actually posted by the gentleman who's got a fair amount of background in guns, weapons, owns a lot of different guns. He's not had an AR-15 before, but he posted a video because he wanted to see how it changed rate of fire. Now, I agree with the president's view on bump stocks, because this takes a otherwise very stable, easy to control weapon, an AR-15, and turns it into very close to an automatic weapon. And you'll see that here in just a moment. So go ahead and play this video on bump stock.
This gun is semi-automatic, so every time I pull the trigger, there's going to be a bullet leaving out the end of the chamber. So I'm going to cock back the gun. That puts a bullet into the chamber. Safety is now off, and I'm ready to fire.
Yeah. That was pretty good, quick, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
So this is a 40 round clip, and so every time I pull the trigger 40 times, I can lose all the ammo inside of that clip. And that was pretty fast. You can get a lot of shots off in a pretty short amount of time. So now let's install the bump stock, and as a noob, I've never shot with the bump stock before, we'll see if it's possible to shoot faster than it is with just a straight trigger. So how a bump stock works is actually incredibly simple. The gun slides around inside of the stock and uses the recoil of the gun to shoot more bullets. This piece is pretty important. I'm a right-handed shooter, so I use my right hand to pull the trigger. And so I'm going to take this piece of plastic, slide it onto the gun, and it blocks the trigger on one side. So when I grab the gun, I rest my finger on that piece of plastic on the far side, and then using the gun, I can pull forward with this hand.
Okay, stop it for just a moment,
My finger connects with the
Okay, so I wanted to pause this just for a moment because I want to point out a distinction here. You're going to notice that he does not actually pull the trigger. He only does the first time. Then the weapon does all the trigger pulls on its own after that. So take a look.
Trigger, pulls it, and then the gun will bounce back and forth, and each time it hits my finger, it'll shoot another round. And since the gun is doing it all automatically, it can pull the trigger faster than I can pull the trigger, hence the full auto function of the bump stop. So these are the bullets right here. We have a 5.56, and it's just a whole box of these things. These things are about 40 cents a piece. So I also got these clips. These clips hold 40 rounds. They're about $20 each, and I can take the little bullets and just pop them into the top. And then the whole clip just slides into the gun when you're ready to shoot. This is my first time shooting with the bump stock, so we're gonna see how it goes. I got the clip in place. The stock is functional. Safety is off. We're loaded. And let's see how this works. All right. Okay. That was faster than I expected.
That, my friend,
so that
is a machine gun.
Than I anticipated, obviously. And each time I shoot one of these clips, by the way, it's about 16 American dollars, 16 US dollars. So it's a lot of ammo.
All right, you can pause the video.
Quickly.
All right, so that gives people a understanding of what the bump stock actually does. And without any doubt, turns that AR-15 into a automatic weapon. That rate of fire is incredible, what a bump stock will do to it. And I would have no use whatsoever, and I know of nobody whatsoever who has use for a bump stock in a weapon. Even when there's 1,000 arguments for why people should be able to own a AR-15 for home defense and that sort of thing. You can't control where that barrel of the weapon starts to go. I mean, you can tell this guy who was doing the demonstration, a well-built individual, that barrel of that weapon is going to start going all over the place at that rate of fire. It wouldn't even be an effective form of control firing on an intruder coming into your house and that sort of thing. I would much rather have the single pull and, you know, the magazine capacity to be able to, you know, hit somebody who's breaking into your house or threatening your safety. But to have a bump stock on it, completely an unnecessary device. And fully automatic weapons are already illegal to own in this country. This is not a weapon that a person walking around on the street or somebody even out just shooting out on the range to have fun. There's no reason to have this bump stock.
Now, Kevin, you're talking about how spray and pray, right? Mm-hmm. Well, if you look at the guy, you see his muscles. He's very well built, like you said, and it was still pretty much going everywhere. Mm-hmm. And I'm just saying the average person probably doesn't have that much muscle. I know I don't.
Yeah.
So I probably would not be able to do anything.
If you were shooting this with a bump stock on it, Kyle, I wouldn't want to be standing anywhere near you.
Me too.
And knowing that you're pointing the barrel somewhere else other than me. Yeah, the barrel of that weapon would be going all over the place. Yeah. So totally agree that somebody should own a AR-15 for their personal defense. Bump stock, completely unnecessary. And it puts that weapon into an automatic class.
They can ban bump stocks all they want. 3D printer will take care of it in about 5 minutes. I mean, again, they're passing legislation that's not going to stop the problem.
Agreed. I agree that is not going to stop the problem. So we're actually going to share some solutions that are already in play around the country that are stopping this problem of school shooters and stopping this problem of somebody going into any venue and shooting the place up.
I have to go back and I kind of disagree with you guys on why you guys on people shouldn't own this. I can think
I'm talking about a bump stock.
Yeah, I'm talking a reason why people should be able to own a bump stock, and that's for recreational shooting. Why shouldn't they be able to? If they're a law-abiding citizen, why should they not be able to go to the gun range?
All I'm saying is if an automatic weapon is something that this country thinks should be illegal, this is an automatic weapon.
It's already illegal. I mean, automatic weapons are illegal. This we're going down the road of this is, you know, some people would consider this an assault rifle. My good friend Brian Blake, who was a representative in Washington State, taught me that this isn't an assault rifle. This is a modern firearm.
Of course it is.
And so we have to stop calling these things assault rifles when they aren't. I don't see anything wrong with somebody who wants to have this type of a bump stock if they're out recreationally shooting. It's bad people doing bad things is the problem.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. Totally agree. I'm simply saying that the bump stock does turn the AR-15 into a fully auto rifle. Its rate of fire is very insignificantly slower than what a full auto rifle is. When you heard full auto, fire rate is very similar to what you just heard out of that weapon.
And then, you know, again, you guys talk about being able to control the gun. That guy in Vegas must have been one heck of a shot. Because if this, you know, bump stock is going to take his aim out every time he pulls the trigger, boy.
There's a huge crowd.
Spraying it all over a crowd of people, too. You have to take that in consideration. In which a full auto weapon, like if you've ever even seen them used in combat, the firer doesn't sit there and just run this thing till his barrel melts off the end of the weapon. He'll use bursts, basically, and that's why the M16 is set up for a 3-round burst as well. But he used bursts, like if their position's being overrun by a number of people, you know, attacking them all at once. That's why you use a full auto rifle, is to take out a crowd of bad guys coming at you. That's when you use a fully auto rifle. And you're basically doing what's called spray and pray. That's what a machine gun's for. That's what any fully auto rifle is for. But anyhow, just wanted to give people an idea of what the bump stock actually is. At least in my opinion, if somebody's if people's belief is that people shouldn't have a fully automatic rifle. I'm simply saying that this bump stock turns the AR-15 into a fully automatic rifle. That's what I'm saying. And so let's move on to Governor Jay Inslee. So everybody's aware of these school shootings, that the recent school shooting in Florida and the subsequent school shootings that have been taken place in other areas of the country. Well, there are areas of the country who are already taking action and have years ago taken action to prevent a school shooting from happening in their area. Now, what I want to do is, recently in response to this Florida shooting, President Trump had all the governors at the White House, and they were talking about solutions to these school shootings. And one of the things you've heard President Trump say is that we should be arming a percentage of the teachers on the, whether it's grade school, middle school, high school, college campuses, whatever, there should be a percentage of the teachers armed on the campus, and that they should publish right on the school grounds that there are armed teachers and or faculty on the staff. If people think that's not a deterrent, 100% disagree. It absolutely is a deterrent. And in fact, we're going to show how this type of deterrent has worked with 100% effectiveness in a number of different areas around the country. 100% effectiveness. Okay, so Trump's not just guessing on this. There's actually several models in which what he's talking about is you create armed security on the location, and you make it difficult for a armed person to get into that facility and do harm to anybody. It's already in play. So let's first of all share what our Governor Jay Inslee, the comment that he made, and then a immediate follow-up. A governor from another state talks about what he's doing in his state. So let's hear from Governor Jay Inslee, otherwise known as #Governor Goofy.
Supremely effective in allowing family members that realize there's a risk.
Actually, back this up just a little bit, Kyle. We want to get his entire comment in there. There we go.
Right. We have a program called the Extreme Risk Protection Order System that has been supremely effective in allowing family members that realize there's a risk to have them separated from their firearm. It involves a judicial decision, it involves a hearing, and it has saved lives, I'm sure, in the state of Washington. And I would commend it to you for national attention, because it makes sure that when you have an uncle that might be, you have concern about depression, it allows law enforcement to separate your uncle and depressed uncle from his firearm. Right. If you have somebody in your family that might have some violent tendencies, after a hearing, an ex parte or a potential ex parte order, you get an order to actually allow law enforcement to remove them. It's been in operation for a year. It's been extremely successful. I would commend it to you. Second issue. Now, I know that you have suggested arming our teachers. And
no,
I just
not your teachers.
Not your,
arming a small portion that are very gun adept, that truly know how to handle. Because I do feel, Governor, it's very important that gun-free zones, you have a gun-free zone, it's like an invitation for these very sick people to go there. I do think that there has to be some form of major retaliation if they're able to enter a school. And if that happens, you're not going to have any problems anymore, because they're never going to the school. You're never going to have a problem. So it would just be a very small group of people that are very gun adept. Anyway, go ahead.
If I may respond to that.
Okay, so a point I want to capture right here. Keep in mind that Governor Inslee is standing in a room full of very intelligent leaders from all around the country. Okay? And these are people who understand the difference between the truth and your truth. And Governor Inslee is about to share the your truth version of the truth.
His truth. No,
yeah, his truth. Yeah, when I'm using the word your truth, because you'll hear people like Oprah and several others who have said embrace your truth. What they're essentially telling people is to ignore the truth and embrace your own truth, which you again hear these things that you're entitled to your own opinions, but you're not entitled to your own facts. That's along the lines of right here. So here, Governor Inslee, instead of sharing facts, shares his own opinion. Go ahead.
Let me just suggest whatever percentage it is. I heard at one time you might have suggested 20%. Whatever percentage it is, speaking as a grandfather, speaking as a governor of the state of Washington, I have listened to the people who would be affected by that. I have listened to the biology teachers, and they don't want to do that at any percentage. I've listened to the first grade teachers that don't want to be pistol packing first grade teachers. I've listened to law enforcement who have said they don't want to have to train teachers as law enforcement agencies, which takes about 6 months. Now, I just think this is a circumstance where we need to listen, that educators should educate, and they should not be foisted upon this responsibility of packing heat in first grade classes. Now, I understand you have suggested this, and we suggest things, and sometimes then we listen to people about it, and maybe they don't look so good a little later. So I just suggest we need a little less tweeting here, a little more listening, and let's just take that off the table and move forward.
All right, thank you very much. You know, we have
Okay, stop the comment there. Okay, you're going to hear a follow-up comment from a governor who shares reality instead of this Governor Inslee's version of truth. Very clearly from his comments, he's pushing a political agenda. What is it?
He wants to run against Donald Trump in 2020.
He's trying to, he's positioning himself to be a presidential candidate. There's been also,
what he did here to the president wasn't actually, I mean, it was an embarrassment. He tried to call him out for twittering instead of,
maybe a little less tweeting, a little more less tweeting. and here's what else he says. He says, you know, as a grandfather, okay, now because he's a governor, is his hearing people as a grandfather more valid than any other grandpa anywhere else?
Well,
in the country?
I guarantee you that he heard 50% of the people, and that's.
I don't actually think the number's even nowhere near that big.
I don't believe
Chris.
for a second that law enforcement told him that they don't want to train teachers. I believe the law enforcement would do everything that they can to protect the people.
Chris, I think it's worse than that. I think Governor Inslee heard maybe 1% or 5% of the people.
Actually, I think he probably just heard what his staff told him, and then he regurgitated that.
Now,
that's right.
The problem that I have, right? He brought up first grade teachers and biology teachers. Now, I know at the high school I went to, I think we had maybe one biology teacher out of all the teachers. Out of all the teachers, maybe that's like 1% of the teachers. Just one subject. And then also first graders. What about second graders, preschoolers, kindergarten, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th? But first grade teachers don't want to do that. But what about the other ones? He doesn't bring up all the other teachers.
And I shared with you guys the other day that when my wife heard this, who was a school teacher in a school in Minnesota, which we won't name so that we're not putting schools on the hook over there, but the minute she heard this suggestion, she first of all said, "Oh, I'd be packing heat in the school in a heartbeat." And there's 2 teachers right across the hallway from her. It goes, they would be too. So in the first like 30 feet, you enter the school, there have been 3 teachers with guns.
This isn't the first time. I mean, I think it happened in the same day. I mean, this is the second time that he has given his truth versus what the actual truth is. You know, when he was on MSNBC later on this day, I believe it was this day, he told MSNBC that he couldn't veto the records request bill that our legislators should be ashamed for just passing here in our state. He told them that he couldn't veto it, and that's not true. That's a lie. He can veto it. And you know, this is the second time this guy in the same day has been caught pushing agendas versus what the actual, you know, the truth is.
So people, this is a version of politics which has nothing to do with progress. This is politics that Jay Inslee is espousing, and you're going to hear from a bunch of other people in the room who are actually trying to solve the problem, which was not Governor Goofy from Washington. So let's hear from the governor who follows up Inslee and gives him a little dose of reality. Obviously, he's not directing these comments at Governor Inslee, but he shares experiences from his own state. Now keep in mind that Governor Inslee just said, at no percentage would teachers be interested in carrying firearms in school and being in part responsible for school security. At no percentage.
I would also
just the biology teachers and first graders.
And I also would like to point out that at no time over the last day or so did I see any of the media show the follow-up that came, the next governor that spoke right after Jay Inslee.
So you get to hear from the next governor. Go ahead, roll it, Kyle.
States right now that do that. And I think with that in mind, I'll call on Greg Abbott, great governor of Texas. Greg? Right here. You have it?
Sure. Texas authorized schools to adopt policies to implement a school marshal program where individuals would be trained to have a weapon and to be able to use that weapon. And we now have well over 100 school districts in the state of Texas where teachers or other people who work in the school do carry a weapon and are trained to be able to respond to an attack that occurs. Now, it's not always a school teacher. It could be a coach. It could be an administrator. It could be anybody who works in that school. But it's a well-thought-out program with a lot of training in advance. And candidly, some school districts, they promote it because they will have signs out front, a warning sign that be aware there are armed personnel on campus, warning anybody coming on there that if they attempt to cause any harm, they're going to be in trouble.
Well, I think that's great. And so essentially what you're saying is that when a sick individual comes into that school, they can expect major trouble, right? Major trouble. The bullets are going to be going toward him also. And I think that's great. And you know what's going to happen? Nobody's going into that school, Greg.
Okay, pause it there.
Big difference.
All right. Yes, a big difference indeed. So here, interestingly, Governor Goofy from Washington gets up and says, at no percentage would teachers be interested in doing this. And immediately following him is the governor from Texas, who says over 100 school districts have already implemented this program, and teachers. And interestingly, they happen to have a percentage of people who are interested in doing this. Is Washington just immune to common sense, or was Governor Goofy actually just spewing nonsense?
Have you seen what's been going on in Olympia the last 2 days? All common sense is gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so here, I promised you that we would show you that having guns in the premise actually works with 100% effectiveness, and making it difficult for anybody to enter the place who has interest in doing harm to others. So a combination of those two things, having some good people who are interested in protecting the occupants inside the place being armed, is a definite deterrent. And having something in place that makes it difficult for the bad guy to get in is also a very effective deterrent. When you put these two things together, it works with 100% effectiveness. Now, before I show these things, Kyle, I want you to bring up the Gallup poll, the least trusted professions in the United States. Bring that up. Okay, this was actually done in December of 2017. Interestingly enough, this usually always shows up of being very much the same. By the way, I'm very proud to say that at the top of this list, the most trusted, top of this list, nurses in hospitals. Who doesn't trust their nurse, even more so than their doctors? If you notice that doctors are further down the list, they trust their nurses. Guess who's right below their military officers? I'm really proud to say military officers are some of the most trusted people. Below those are grade school teachers. Now, the thing is do you think the general public and just bad guys out in public, do they have any reason to dislike their grade school teacher? Do you think they're going into the school to shoot kids and to shoot teachers because they hate kids and they hate teachers? Do you think they're doing that for that reason?
No.
No, they're doing it for attention, aren't they? And they're also doing it because they can. There is no armed person there, and there's no prevention from getting into the place. Okay? So they can. This is a sick individual who's after attention and chooses a very horrific way of doing this. But here, I want to go down to the bottom of the list, and let's see who's on the bottom.
There's no way. I'm calling BS on the poll here, Kevin, because they got lawyers. Like, they're pretty high up on the list there as trusted.
Well, look at some of the others that are just below them. Interestingly enough, quite close to the bottom, TV reporters as well, state office holders, lawyers, business executives, advertising practitioners, members of Congress. So look at the bottom three: members of Congress, car salespeople, and lobbyists. So you have lobbyists and you have members of Congress. Now, interestingly enough, 2 out of the 3 least trusted, and actually from a lot of people would say, would you agree these are probably some of the most hated people in the country too, right? Okay, members of Congress and lobbyists. Do you know one of the? I want to put this picture up of the U.S. Senate. Want people to see like how many people are sitting in this when the Senate is in session. There you go. Look at how many people are sitting there when the Senate is in session. I'll tell you what, if somebody wants to get on the news and wants to really make themselves famous, like this Nicholas Cruz, you know, that was part of his mantra, obviously, wants to get on the news and make himself famous. Well, by golly, this would be a great place to do it, wouldn't it? Go in there and shoot up the U.S.
It's not.
Oh, but wait, why? But I'm getting to my point. Why would this not be a good place for Nicholas Cruz to go?
Because I guarantee you, probably 90% of the people in this picture have a pistol on them.
Okay, but sure. Okay, and what else is in this facility?
I might be off on
Guards?
the 90%, but I'm pretty sure it's even a high number.
Are there possibly also armed guards?
Oh
there?
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, is there possibly a system that prevents a bad guy from getting in the first place? Yeah, you know what's interesting is not only is this place full of people with guns, but there are guards with guns. And there's a system in place that makes it difficult for the bad guy to get in there to begin with. So a coward like Nicholas Cruz is never going to try to come in here, and we have never heard about a mass shooting in the U.S. Senate, have we?
No.
And why? Because two things are in place. The
Security.
deterrent to getting in and a huge deterrent inside the house itself. Okay? Never been a mass shooting there. Because cowards are not looking for people who are actually armed and who have defenses put into place to prevent them from doing what they want to do. They pick the easy targets. Schools should not be easy targets. Now, there's another place that I want to share that also has had 100% effectiveness as well. Pop the other picture up there for me, if you would. This is a courtroom. Sitting up front over here, like right above me, this is the judge. There's a stenographer over there. There's the prosecutors. There's the defense. You look at the jury sitting over there. There's people back in the audience. Is a judge, by the bad guys in the community, is a judge generally a hated individual?
Yeah, they are very popular.
They are
That's
not
for sure.
very popular among the worst members of society. These are people that if somebody could pull some kind of atrocity on them, they would do it in a heartbeat. Why haven't we heard of a mass shooting in a courtroom?
Because
Why?
they have a police officer in there.
Yeah, because there's guys with guns inside the room.
Well, to get into our courtrooms here in Cowles County, you have to go through a metal detector.
You have to go through also
X-ray
there's
machine.
a deterrent. There's a deterrent to the bad guy bringing in a weapon to begin with.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else is in place?
Well, they have bailiffs.
They have a bailiff. Yeah,
Well, sheriff's deputies now.
sheriff
but, yeah.
deputies are there, so people are armed in the inside the courtroom, and there's a deterrent to getting in. What Trump is talking about is putting armed people inside the school. Aha, that's what they have in the U.S. Senate. That's what they have in courtrooms. That's what they have in anywhere else where they've had 100% success in preventing a mass shooting and putting some system in place that makes it difficult for the bad guy to get in to begin with. You know something, if you had, let's say if you even had metal detection, you can set these devices up so that it's not going off with just somebody's belt buckle and whatever. You can have it set up so that would detect a knife and or a weapon or whatever. And wouldn't it be a really handy thing? Now think about when my wife was talking about her school situation where she and two of the other teachers right in the first hallway you come into would have been armed had they been able to be armed. Wouldn't it be even handy for them if now where these rooms where these teachers are that are armed, if they have a video monitor of the entrance coming in, like where they're at, and an alarm system that would go off should somebody walk through that door carrying something that's beyond just a belt buckle or keys or whatever, and it detects that this is, number one, there's a person coming into the building who's not authorized, and secondly, they're carrying something that's more than just a belt buckle or a set of keys. This armed teacher is immediately alerted that this is the case. Do you think this would have some, and there's a sign out front that says teachers in the school, like this Texas governor shared, teachers in the school and on the campus are armed. Do you think this stops a shooter from coming in the building? It's been 100% effective
I think it's a
so
deterrent
far
for sure, yeah.
in the courtrooms. It's been 100% effective in the U.S. Senate or our houses around the state. There's other places too where this has also been 100% effective when they have recognized that going back to 9/11, what was one of the problems in airport security?
Wasn't they could carry knives or what?
Yeah, you could actually, it was actually legal then to carry something like a box cutter knife into the plane. Okay, there's always been you have to go through this process of being, go through metal detection and be checked out. Does it prevent people from flying, having a deterrent, getting onto a plane carrying a weapon? Does it prevent people from flying? Well, it prevents bad guys who might want to. Nobody even thinks about bringing a gun there because they can't get one through. I actually had a friend of mine recently who went through airport security with a gun in his bag. He's a law enforcement detective guy and had forgotten his weapon there as opposed to checking it in the other way. Anyway, you're not going to get through airport security with a weapon. Why should you be able to get into the school with a weapon? And when you think about, we're protecting these passengers on the plane by having airport security. We're protecting members of the U.S. Senate by having security. We're protecting members of the court by having security there. Do we not care enough about our kids to make sure that armed teachers are on site and that we have a deterrent for allowing the bad guy to get in the first place? Do we not care enough about the kids?
Apparently, it's just to push our agendas up to this point.
All I'm saying is the problem that, think about all the gun laws that have changed and all the gun laws that have come into play over the years, and it has not changed the statistic of mass shootings in a courtroom. It has not changed the statistics of mass shooting in U.S. Congress or U.S. Senate or any of these places that have had these deterrents in place for many, many decades. No changes in gun laws have ever altered the lack of zero mass shootings in any of these institutions anywhere, because it's not the gun.
That's right. It doesn't matter what legislation they pass. It's not going to change. It's not going to stop violence. It's not going to curb it. It's not going to end it. It's something that we have always dealt with.
But having a deterrent of getting into the facility and armed people inside the thing, where we see here in many models in society where it works with 100% effectiveness. Donald Trump is exactly right. And in multiple states around the country, there already have been doing for years. And there's reasons why you don't hear of school shootings in those areas, because they're ready for it. And they have taken measures to protect their kids. My kids will not ever, these two little girls that you see run around the studio here, they're never going to be in a public school where there's not a deterrent from a bad guy getting in and armed teachers on the campus. As long as a school cannot offer that level of security to my child, they will not be in that school. My kids will have an opportunity to go to school where there's an armed guard and a deterrent. What do you guys think? Did I stump you?
It's absolutely crazy to watch this, because we've watched these shootings play out over, I can remember for years now. And this happens every time people wants to take guns away from each other, and they think that that's the answer. And you guys, you just keep missing the mark.
Mm-hmm.
Pass all the gun legislation you want. It's just like when I was saying the bump stock thing. You can ban the bump stock all you want. Me and my 3D.
Yeah, and you're right. You're right. That's not gonna change somebody walking into a. But you know what? So whether we have bump stocks or not, you could. So let's say we argue the two things. Whether we have bump stocks or not, will it change the number of shootings in the U.S. Senate?
No.
Will it change the number of shootings in the U.S. courtrooms? Will it change the number of shootings on U.S. airline planes flying? No. And why? Because they have measures in place to stop guns from getting in to begin with, and they have measures in place where they have armed people within the premises that would take somebody out should they get past those deterrents to coming in.
Well, it's like Joffrey Keller just said, Detroit's highest murder rate and highest gun control. So basically, Chicago is one big gun-free zone. The only people in Chicago to have guns are the criminals and the cops.
Yeah, that's not a good setup.
No, it's not. And it reflects that. I mean, I remember a month and a half ago, we had a live broadcast going, and it was straight out of Chicago. It had been 24 to 48 hours without a shooting. And so they put up a live stream, and everybody was was, on the live stream trying to send positive vibes so there wouldn't be another shooting. But as long as you have gun-free zones.
And by the way, people, we weren't laughing because that's funny. We're laughing because of how ridiculous that is.
Right. It's ridiculous.
It's not funny to have shootings anywhere.
No, but I mean, Chicago, that's a perfect example of what they want to do doesn't work. Banning it, prohibition doesn't work, just not on guns, on just a lot of things.
There's a lot of places in which when people say that, so let's talk about Second Amendment for a moment. And there's a lot of people that say that, who are these, gun control advocates, say that the Second Amendment, had its purpose at one point in time in this country and no longer does. And, people should not be carrying around guns, et cetera, et cetera. Well, you know what? There's locations around the world right now today. So we don't have to look back in history or anything else. There's countries around the world right now where out of the general public, there are no guns whatsoever. And you'd go, wow, that sounds like there'd be like no crimes in the general public and everything else. I'll tell you what the real crimes, the serious crimes are that are occurring in those countries are the crimes committed by the government against its own people. We were just talking about North Korea just the other day, weren't we? There's a dictator over there that makes sure his citizens have no guns whatsoever. The only people who have guns are the police and the military in that country, and perhaps a little bit of the upper crust, the 1% who are in that Danju group. But nobody gets to have a gun over there, and 200,000 people have completely disappeared who went into the country. Millions of people have been assassinated and killed by that ruthless dictator over there who has all the control.
Donald Trump just went live on a live broadcast, and it's up on KATU News right now, and it's talking about safety in schools.
If you have the capability of bringing that up, Kyle, pop it on the screen.
I don't know how you do that. But Kevin, I want to back up for a second here, and I want to, and we hear this a lot, and we see it a lot on social media. The Second Amendment was not meant for hunting.
That's correct. It's not a hunting. Yeah.
The Second Amendment, and you can read and you can research this, was put in place to protect ourselves, our families,
Hood,
our personal
Sandy
property
Hook,
from the government.
San Bernardino, Pulse Nightclub, and so many more. It's ridiculous. So today we're here in a bipartisan fashion to show leadership.
The video pause.
No, but it's still watching it over here. Feinstein's not looking too happy. Of course, she didn't get nominated yesterday in California, so that could be part of that reason. Yeah, what happened to sound, Kyle?
Well, currently we have many screens going on at the same time.
Well, that's weird.
Okay, well, it does that sometimes. The video froze up. You could let that load in the background there, and then
the
see
reason
if we
why
can.
I wanted to click over is because when he was talking yesterday, he said that he was going to do a bump stock ban with or without Congress. So at any time he could break out his pen and be, hey, guess what? And so that's why I was saying we might want to watch this because he's got some paperwork there in front of him. I'm just kidding.
Well, I was saying earlier with regard to bump stocks, I don't have a problem with.
Public shootings in the United States since 1950 have taken place in gun-free zones. It's terrible. You've got to have defense, too. You can't just be sitting ducks. And that's exactly what we've allowed people in these buildings and schools to be. Second,
I like how some Democrat is sitting there punching the frowny face.
Oh, you should see the comments. They aren't even listening to what he says.
Where mental health was so obviously 39 different red flags. I mean, everybody was seeing them. The local police, the state police, the FBI, everybody was seeing that this guy was sick and nothing happened. Third, we have to ensure that when students, educators, family, neighbors, that when they warn authorities, that the authorities act quickly and decisively, unlike what took place in Florida, which was horrible. Fourth, we have to pursue common sense measures that protect the rights of law-abiding Americans while keeping guns. And we have to keep the guns out of the hands of those that pose the threat. And this really...
Oh, somebody's going to be fired.
That wasn't our end. I just want to put
Someone's
that out
in
there.
trouble.
All right, let's pause it there.
I'm the biggest fan of the Second Amendment. Many of you are. I'm a big fan of the NRA, but I had lunch with them, with Wayne and Chris and David on Sunday, and said, it's time. We got to stop this nonsense. It's time. So we've made suggestions to many of you, and I think you're going to put a lot of those suggestions in. Plus, you're going to have your own ideas. Certain ideas sound good, but they're not good. You know, you can harden the site to a level that nobody can get in. The problem is if the shooter's inside and if he gets in the door and closes the door, we can't get people in. It's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars all over the country, and we'll have nice hard sites. The door closes, and now we can't get in. Have to send the tractor through the walls. So we have to be careful of that. And we have to create a culture that cherishes life and human dignity. So we're going to all sit around. We're going to come up with some ideas. Hopefully we can put those ideas in a very bipartisan bill. It would be so beautiful to have one bill that everybody could support, as opposed to, 15 bills. Everybody's got their own bill. But if we could have one terrific bill that everybody, started by the people around this table, special people. These are the people that seem to be just most interested, very interested in this problem, and it's a big problem. So with that, I think I'd like to start. Maybe I'll ask John, you can start off, and then we'll go back and forth. We'll leave the media for a little while. And
I find it really interesting. He's got Dianne Feinstein sitting right next to him the next day after she was told she wasn't relevant anymore.
Okay, we'll find the, go ahead and pause the video, Kyle.
It's idealistic, it's wonderful, it's a beautiful thing.
How you do that?
But if you think that somebody's going to be able to walk
into
a school, if they feel...
Okay, so that was President Trump commenting live and talking about some development. Here's what I really like is that he's focusing on something that's a real solution. And we talked about the evidence of real solutions that are already working all around the country, have for many, many decades, and all the years that gun laws have changed in various states or in this country, none of those gun law changes have affected the statistic of mass shootings on airplanes, in courtrooms, in U.S. Senate, in our House of Representatives, anywhere. None of it's ever changed. And why? Because all of those places, and there's many more like this, all of them have a deterrent to getting in and a deterrent inside the place called a armed guard and or multiple people carrying a gun. That's exactly what President Trump is talking about doing in the schools, and that is exactly how you take schools off the list of easy targets for idiots like Nicholas Cruz. Now, we have a local story that you wanted to share this morning, Chris. Kind of ties into this piece here a little bit. Let's find the a situation up in Toutle, and you can go ahead and read that, share that.
Yeah,
Chris.
this just happened this morning. I can't read it from there. So it says, Cowlitz Sheriff deputies removed a 15-year-old student from the Toutle school for threatening to shoot up the school. No one hurt. This happened this morning about 9:04 a.m. Says Toutle, Washington, Cowlitz County Sheriff's deputies took a 15-year-old male student to the hospital yesterday afternoon for mental health evaluation after he was overheard making statements that he wanted to shoot up the Toutle school. The deputy interviewed the student at the Toutle High School with school officials present, and the student said he was just joking about shooting up the school. The other students who overheard the threats were cooperative with school officials, who in turn were quick to contact the sheriff's office so the matter could be investigated. It is also important to know that we do not see any indication that the student took any overt steps to carry out the threat other than to make the verbal threats.
Okay, let's stop there. That's enough in terms of the context of the story. Here's something that's relevant about this. Do you notice that the Cowlitz County Sheriff's Department responds immediately to verbal threats made by somebody at the school, and they immediately go out there and take care of this problem? I wonder if Sheriff Israel, Broward County in Florida, would like to learn anything from this model, because they had 45 visits, multiple contacts, multiple people expressing concerns about Nicholas Cruz. And even 4 days before the shooting happens, his own family again notifies the sheriff's department that this kid is unhinged and something needs to be done about him. And 4 days later, on Valentine's Day, he goes and shoots up the school. I wonder if Sheriff Nelson was the sheriff down there in Broward County, and our own police officers here locally were over there. I bet you 100% there would have been a different result. Nicholas Cruz would have not ever made it to the status of being a school shooter. That's the way you take care of business, is get out there and take care of the threat and deal with it the minute you're aware that there's a problem.
Yeah, I haven't, looking at going back to Jay Inslee's conversation with the governor about the program that we have here in Washington State that passed last year. Even after that's passing, that law isn't doing what it should be doing, because they still aren't taking the guns away from people that they claim shouldn't have them. So there's several people, I said this the other day, there's several people running around in Cowlitz County who should just not own a gun. Okay. And
so Governor Inslee saying it's working supremely well.
So when Governor Inslee is saying that it's working is wrong, because I know that law enforcement has been contacted by local citizens in our area about some of these individuals that have these guns, and there's just nothing they can do until they actually do something. So, again, 1 year isn't enough time to say whether a program's working well or not working well. Also,
when you're grandstanding, that's what you do, though, which is what Governor Goofy was doing.
But yeah, I mean, if I would have been there, I would be like, Governor, that's just not true. There's people running around in your state right now, according to your standards, that shouldn't own a gun, that have guns. So your program's not working.
Here's something else that Dana Lash mentioned here on the news recently. She was being interviewed on CNN, and interestingly enough, the host there on the show, Allison, wasn't really interested in what she had to say with regard to this. But so you talk about all these different things. They want to continue to add more laws or more rules into who should or shouldn't have a gun. Do you know that right now, based on the existing laws in this country, there are 7 million people that have not been reported by the states to the federal database, which tracks these people. So when somebody does a background check, they're doing a federal background check to determine whether this person should have a gun or not. And there's 7 million people who have crimes that all fit underneath the should not have a gun category that are not being reported to the database, which would be caught on a background check for a firearm
Well, here's
purchase.
something that we haven't talked about when it comes to the gun debate, and I'm not seeing a lot of other people talking about it right now, with immigration being such big as a deal as it is right now. Any immigrant that comes into this country right now can have a gun in an hour. There's going to be no checks or balances on them no matter what we do, because they're here illegally. Hey, Democrats, progressive liberals, why aren't you guys dealing with that issue? How are you going to get the immigration people who are here illegally, how are you going to get them under control with their guns? I mean, because they aren't buying their guns here, probably. I mean, they might buy some of them, but we know that they're all over in Mexico and they can just walk across the border with them. So what are you guys going to do to stop that one? I mean, there's just so many things that we've got to do this, but they won't address simple things like, well, what are you going to do to stop illegal immigrants who are using guns in this country? Because there is no way to track that. You guys won't let us track them.
Well, to summarize and wrap up this conversation around the gun issues, the shooting issues, et cetera, that have taken place around the country, we have presented very simple solutions, which are along the lines of exactly what President Trump is talking about doing, and that is securing our schools and making them safe by simply putting armed people inside them and by creating deterrents that prevent bad guy or slow bad guys down from getting into the school to begin with. When that is done, that works 100% effective. And we know this because we see it work 100% effectively in our courts, in our U.S. houses, in the Senate, in Congress, in your state level. There's all kinds of offices where there has been zero statistics of mass shootings or any type of shootings happening because there's no opportunity for them to do so. Even as much as, and this is the reason why I wanted to share this Gallup poll thing earlier with how distrusted members of Congress are. These are actually members by many people in many states are hated individuals. If somebody wanted to make a point and do a mass shooting, go and shoot all these people who are these hated individuals. Wouldn't you think they would be the tops on the target? And wouldn't you think that in the courtrooms or these judges who are sentencing these bad guys away to prison and stuff like that, they later get out on the street? Don't you think those would be places they'd want to go back and potentially shoot these people up? If these are places that there's actually reason, there's animosity for people to go in and do these types of things, they cannot, because they're deterrents in the locations to even getting in, and there's people inside the facility with a gun. That's exactly what we should have in our schools. Our schools should not be an easy target for violent people. Gun laws don't take the violence out of any individual. They don't stop shootings from happening, but deterrents for getting in and good guys with guns absolutely do, and there's 100% evidence all around our country that that's exactly the case. For people that think that the arguments around Second Amendment and people not needing guns in today's world, and that there's this argument about the government itself being a threat to its people, well, just look around the world in where governments have taken all the guns away from their people, and where it's only the military and the police that actually carry weapons. And you got a country in a situation that no American would ever want to live in, because their citizens are murdered by the day. This is happening right now, today, around this country. By the day, citizens murdered by their own government, by their own people, put into prison, wrongfully charged. It's all done because they can get away with it. Their citizens are not armed to defend themselves.
History is really important.
History is an important thing.
And I want to throw out there, because a lot of young people...
Before you finish that, Chris, I want to say, to your point, the reason why history is important is because history helps you understand the truth. When you're asking who gets to determine the truth, all this evidence that we've been sharing shares the truth.
I would also like to add that if you guys want to get technical and you guys want to use data and stuff like that, let's talk about why these school shootings are happening, okay? First of all, back in the 50s, 60s, 40s, our students were taught how to handle firearms in school. And at some
some of them had a shotgun in the back window of their truck at school.
What I'm saying is that there were actual shooting education classes at the schools. They had shooting teams. They had shooting competitions. It was something that was normal in our country. That was a normal thing. We have taken those guns out of the school. We have taken gun education out of school. So we don't teach our kids this. It's now parents' responsibility. If we are going to talk about putting guns back in the schools, then I also believe that we need to be teaching the kids how to handle them and how to and how to shoot. So that way, if a bad guy does come in, they're going to have a whole school full of people that can meet them with deadly force if they choose to come in and do that. And so I think it makes sense to put shooting back in the curriculum of school. And I think that will also deter people from going in and saying, hey, let's go shoot up the school.
Now, there's more evidence, you guys, that guns are not perpetrators of crime. And here's how many guns are actually owned by U.S. citizens in this country?
Oh, I mean, just the AR-15 alone, I think they said like 7 million people own it or something. I mean, I got beat up on the internet the other day for saying that gun was part of our nation's heritage, which it is. Yeah. But
yeah. So
what's not part of my heritage? Well, yeah, it was. I mean, the Second Amendment made it part of your. No, say that again.
What's the number of how many guns are actually owned by Americans right now in this country? It's
high. It's like 360 million, I think, is when you're talking guns over. And I'm not sure if that number is right, but I just know it was. I heard the number the other day on TV because they bring that up all the time. But that number was just AR-15s, but it's ridiculous.
Okay, so let's just use the number 300 million because it's the number that's most commonly thrown around.
Look, it is 270 to 300 million. Isn't that what I said?
Okay, so let's use the number 300 million. Okay, so now let's just say on a very remote chance that it's the gun that causes the crime. It's the gun that's the perpetrator of the crime, and let's just say that there's even I would say that there's no chance whatsoever of that being the case. But let's say there's even a 1% chance of being that case. being that there's 300 million guns roughly roaming around this country, if even 1% of them are rogue weapons, there would be 3 million shootings going on right now.
I definitely don't want to try these odds.
Yeah, there'd be 3 million shootings. So let's say if it's not even 1%. Let's take the let's back that up a little bit, and let me change this again, and let's take another look at this. Let's say it's 1/10 of 1%. 1/10 of 1% would be 300,000 shootings. 1/100th of 1% chance that guns are actually the perpetrators of crime. Well, there'd be 30,000 shootings going on right now. If it's 1/1000th of 1%, there'd be 3,000 shootings going on right now. Because these guns, I'm sure most of these people are at work or whatever, and their guns are probably at home not being watched. And if it was actually a gun that causes a crime or creates a situation like that, there's absolutely no statistic ever would demonstrate that guns are the reason or cause of violent crime. It's always the individual. When you create a deterrent, like we've already shared earlier, in public places, when you create a deterrent, an impossibility of somebody getting into the location and then properly armed people inside of it, it has shown to be 100% effective. In every single institution that's implemented that, it's been 100% effective for preventing a shooting of any kind, much less a mass shooting, from happening inside of those facilities. We're going to leave it at that here on Northwest Digital News. One last local thing that I wanted to share is coming up in the Longview community is Shamrock Saturday, and that is on March 17th, rather, which is St. Patty's Day, right?
Is it on a Saturday?
It's on a Saturday, St. Patrick's Day. And yeah, hence the Saturday, Shamrock Saturday. And that's going to be in Longview, and the businesses expect all kinds of green. So bring your green, as in dollar bills.
We have a green.
And come, yeah, it doesn't look green to anybody, though.
Matt Green's going to Klamath that day. McMinimans is opening on St. Patrick's Day this year. This is what the target date is. And
all right, so bring your green to Shamrock Saturday in Longview and help support the businesses here locally.
I also have something.
Go ahead.
As you can see from this really cool area right here, it's something new. So we have a Patreon, a YouTube, a Facebook, and a Twitch, and you can find us there at Northwest Digital News. If you like what we're doing on the show, you can actually donate onto our Patreon.
Yep, you can go to Patreon. You can put 50 cents, $1, $10, whatever you want to. You can be a contributor, a financial supporter to what we're doing here on Northwest Digital News, and we appreciate your support very much. So Kyle put the Patreon connection there on the live stream. So feel free to go there and support the show if you like what we're doing here on Northwest Digital News. We're going to let you go. We appreciate you joining us here as always. I'm Kevin Hunter with Chris Bornstead, Kyle Torgerson. Thanks for joining us here on Northwest Digital News, otherwise known as NDN. Until next time, take care.